Here we are in chapter 2, the tasks of the toddler. Toddlers have a lot of tasks in learning language and learning to work with others, and even starting the process of learning to read. So we know that toddler brains are super active. In fact, I would say most toddler brains maybe even more active than some adult brains. They start to communicate with spoken words in the toddler years. They totally recognize conversational give and take. They start to realize that everything has a name, and they are learning 4 major language tasks at the same time, which we'll talk about. And they're experimenting with language all over the place. Your chapter refers to mother characteristics, which I find maybe a little limiting. Let's call this family characteristics or parent characteristics, because not only mothers talk to children, and certainly not only mothers should talk to children. Everyone who sees a child as appropriate should talk to that child. So parentese is child-directed speech. I've talked about this a little bit before, and that is basically speech that you are using to engage and get their attention and help them. So they're hearing different tones and rhythms and pitches and volumes. And this is all almost innate in adults. I don't think it's just mothers to use this type of speech when they're talking with children. It's the, oh my goodness, you have on a blue hat today. I love your blue hat. Does it keep your head warm? Does it feel soft or is it scratchy? So that's parentese, right? And that is a conversation that I would have with any child. It doesn't need to be a child who understands hat, scratchy, warm. You could have that conversation with an infant, right? Oh my goodness, look at your blue hat. It's so soft and it keeps your head warm. It keeps your head warm, right? Because you are not just speaking to that child to communicate. You are speaking to that child to give examples of how speech works, right? So to get their attention, right? So the more animated and engaged you are as a speaker, the better it is for that child. Mothers may or may not view toddlers as communicators. Yes, they are communicators. As soon as a baby is born, and anybody who's been pregnant would know, even before babies are born, they are communicating with you, right? They're kicking, they've got hiccups, they're doing whatever they're doing, and they're rolling around. Children are communicating from, the minute they're born. If they're not, then we need to look at what's happening, right? So toddlers, they may modify their speech and seek communication interaction. What does that mean? They're changing the way they're talking to you. They're looking to you to communicate with them or other people. And cultural attitudes toward toddlers, of course, impact how we talk to them. Their language abilities as toddlers are growing like amazingly. They're starting to put words together. They're learning grammar. Sometimes they're learning things wrong, but as they develop, as time goes by, they learn the right rules. So an example of this would be the me thing. Me want more cereal. Well, they know that me is me, right? They haven't gotten to switch it to I yet. So that's what they're doing, right? That's their rule. And then later on, they'll learn, oh, I use I when I'm talking about myself, right? But that's a really hard concept when you may not even differentiate yourself from others, right? So it's all this crazy continuum of how children's brains develop. Over-regularization and irregular and regular verbs. So they're using what they know to communicate what they want or what they want to tell you, and it may not always be right because they haven't gotten the finer details yet. Using intonation, tone of voice, and inflection, loudness of voice, semantic meanings. What's the meaning of this word? All right, so all of this stuff is going on, and it's just amazing and fantastic that kids can do this. And part of what's happening through this, because they can communicate now, is they're understanding themselves as a self and others as others. And then they start to learn how to relate to each other. And as you know, if you've ever worked with toddlers before, this is like the big job that they're doing in this age group. You know, they're walking, right? They are developing their language, like they've started that process and they've got that one going on. And those two things are leading them to, okay, now I can move around and I can talk to other people. So now I have to start developing my social skills. How do I interact with other people? So it all goes together, and it's just crazy. Okay. Toddler adult conversations are so important. Joint attention. We'll talk about that. And that's something that we probably should have talked about a little bit earlier, back in the infant stage, is joint attention. Babies will catch your eye and get you to look at something, right? That's the first communication. When a baby is catching your eye and getting your attention, that is communication. And for a baby, that's talking, right? That's how they communicate with you. If you don't have that, if your infant is not catching your eye and trying to move you to other things, to look at other things, you know, if a toddler sees a dog and they don't have the words for it yet, they may catch your eye and direct you over to that dog so that you can say, "Oh, did you see the doggy? That's a doggy over there," or a dog, right? Joint attention is very important, and lack of joint attention can be an indicator of other issues that you need to work on or figure out, right? Okay, adult communication that aids toddler language growth. Labeling, like I did with the dog. Playing the detective. Well, what are you thinking about? What do you mean? Staying attuned, like watching. Providing a speech model. Oh, when I say dog, my mouth goes dog. Acceptance instead of correction. This one's really important. That means when a child says something incorrectly, you say, "Oh," so they say, um, um, "I'm recording." When they say milk and you say, "Oh, milk," you mean milk, milk, right? You're not saying, "Oh, it's not," you don't say milk, you say milk, milk, right? And mostly you want to be positive and encouraging. We'll talk about that. There's so many things in this chapter that we need to talk about. Recognition of accomplishment, word and action games, other adult language developing behaviors, planned toddler activities. Okay, so let's go through this. So we as teachers want to help children. We want to recognize things that are happening. We want to help them understand what's going on in their lives, right? We want to help them understand ideas, impressions, similarities, differences, and form conclusions. This is how they're going to develop their concepts of the world around them, and we need to be there to help them, okay? And one of the things that why this is important in language is because this is how you are learning vocabulary and how you fit in the world, okay? So the major tasks of learning language that toddlers are doing are semantics, pragmatics, phonology, morphology, okay? Sematics is word meanings. Pragmatics is how I use my words. Semantics is what words mean. Pragmatics is how I use those words. Okay. Phonology is the little tiny sounds, right? If you break language down, it is all in English language 46 to 50. We say 46, I think. Phonemes in the English language. It's the smallest little sounds. I'll put in Cobra a chart of those sounds. So it's that the word chart is ch, a, t, right? Ch, a, t. Those are all the sounds in the word chart. In my name, A, E, A, E. It's not syllables. It's not vowels. It's not consonants. It is the little tiny sounds. So the T makes the T sound, right? B makes a B sound. So if you break the word bat into phonemes, it's bat, b, at, b, at, right? And this is important because this is how children start to develop their language. Okay. Morphology is the study of morphemes, and it's the smallest unit of meaning. So this is the smallest unit of meaning, like cat. Cat is the only thing that it can mean, right? But if you add things to it, it becomes something different. So between the ages of 2 and 4, children develop a variety of morphemes. Hat. Hat is something you wear on your head. Top hat is a different kind of hat, but hat is the smallest part of that. Does that make sense? Hope so. Syntax is the rules of order. It's the way you put words together, right? So, and like I said, children are constantly learning and changing those rules as they go. So syntax is the way that all the words fit together. Semantics is the meaning of words. Pragmatics is how you use those words in conversation with others. Phoneme is the smallest little tiny sound of letters of words. Morpheme is the smallest meaning of words. Syntax is how you put all those words together. And semantics, like I said earlier, is meaning, right? The best way to learn language is not to sit down and have words written on a page. It's to hand somebody something and tell them what that is. Here's a ball. Here's a bottle. Here's a pair of eyeglasses. Here's a shoe. Here's a hot dog, right? Being able to be in a space with those things to know what they are. Second best, maybe, is seeing a picture of them. But most important is being able to touch and feel and experience that thing that you get the word to. It's the experience. It's always the experience with little kids. Study of how language is used within the context of the situation is pragmatics. Taking turns talking is a pragmatic. It's one of the rules of how we communicate with each other. Sticking to the topic, not butting in, watching to see when other people are pausing, or, right? All of those things is how you and I speak with each other. That's pragmatics. Egocentric speech is when children are sort of narrating what they're doing. They're talking about themselves. Toddlers, right? They only really understand themselves. And at a certain age, they don't even understand the difference of like you're you, I'm me, that self part. So when they're young and they're doing this, they're narrating their play. It gives them practice using the words. It helps them think to use the words. It helps them have sort of a structure to what they're thinking about, right? And then inner speech. So you'll often see toddlers who are busy doing something, talking through the whole thing. It's because that's how they're understanding it. They're using those words to understand what they're doing. And as they get older, that speech of narration goes away. They don't, they're just thinking it in their head. Now I sometimes still do this. Now I'm driving in the car, like I'm going to turn right here. And I think I've often wondered, like, older people talk to themselves. is this sort of is this a like, is there like a pyramid of language development? So like you go up to a certain point and you reach the top, and then your language development starts to fade away a little bit. I think maybe that may be true. I mean, it's a brain um, development, and um, I don't know. I don't know. It's an idea though, because older people, younger people, little kids don't have the words that they want because they don't know them yet, and older people tend to lose those words. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me. Telegraphic speech is when you're using, I talked about this before, I think you're using few words to tell about a thing. Many words are omitted. Mary doll, right? I would like that doll. I'm Mary and I would like that doll, right? Mary doll. Prosodic speech is using modulation and word stress. So when children are using different characteristics in their voices in the way that they talk to you. Music enhances language. Don't ever think that you shouldn't sing a song to a child. Using different sounds, melodies, rhythms. This is what catches children's ears and helps them, like, helps that stuff sink in, right? Um, I I think some of the best ways that you can learn words and language and ideas is through songs. At least that's the way it works for me. Um, so sing to your kids all the time. If you don't sing with your kids or to your kids at least once a day, you are doing them a disservice. You are making it hard for them to learn language. So think about that. This is a way that children learn language, and we need to know more than the wheels on the bus and the ABCs and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Row 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 Your Boat. And if you're happy and you know it, you need to have lots and lots of songs, and you need to sing them, and you need to help your children learn them. So learning language through music, moving and talking about what you're doing. Not that, it doesn't take a lot to know that. Symbolic play. Between 12 to 15 months, children engage in symbolic play. They're pretending to do things. They are playing as a way to represent experiences. So they are pushing the stroller around the classroom, pretending it's a lawnmower, right? Because that's what they've seen. Using books with toddlers. Predictable patterns, rhythms, and rhymes and sensory input are very important in toddler books. So predictable patterns. The Cat in the Hat is a perfect example of that, right? Actually, that's a rhythm and rhyme one. Predictable pattern. What's going to happen next? So Silly Sally went to town, inside, outside, upside down, right? Silly Sally just keeps going to town, inside, outside, upside down. I'm looking for my Silly Sally book. Hold on just a second. Okay, here's Silly Sally. Silly Sally's going to go to town, inside, walking backwards, upside down, right? And she does that over and over and over and over again. This is a good book for toddlers because it has a predictable pattern. They can help you with it, right? They can tell you what's going to happen next. The Magic Hat is another good one because you say, oh, the magic hat, it moved like this, it moved like that, it spun through the air and over a road, and then something happens. But 14 times throughout the book, you say, oh, the magic hat, right? Sensory input. I don't think I have a sensory input book here. No, but any of those books that you touch that have Pat the Bunny, soft parts and scratchy parts and bumpy parts, those are fantastic. Durability, obviously, you want books that, for toddler books, board books, very sturdy little books, and kid size too, right? Limited vocabulary, simple plot, illustrations that match the text. Here's a very good example of that. This is called inside, outside, upside down. Going in, inside, inside a box, upside down. All the things that are happening in here, you can see in the pictures, very simple words. This is a good book. This is also a good book for a pre-reader because they can totally get these words. So, and I would also say that all children are pre-readers. Book sharing techniques. When a child is alert and curious, establish a special time for reading, create interest with voice, be responsive, encourage attempts to name objects, turn pages, speak. I would say anytime a child is around is a good time for reading. It doesn't have to be a special time. Especially with toddlers, if you sit down in the middle of a classroom and start reading a book, they may be doing other things around you because toddlers rarely sit still. That is okay. It doesn't matter if they're not sitting on your lap. They're still listening. They're still getting something out of it. And especially with toddlers, saying now it's time to sit down and read a book is probably not going to work very well. You may sit down in the middle of the floor or in the reading area and read a book, and people may come over and check in with you and sit down and turn a few pages and look at some things and point something out and then go leave. That's okay. The idea that everyone has to be sitting quietly when you're reading a book is not developmentally appropriate, right? It's not even really developmentally appropriate for preschoolers. So don't worry about it. Just read the books. Have the experiences with kids. Literacy is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So how can we plan to enhance each area of literacy? How can we have them understand reading? Well, in a toddler, a child who picks up this book, looks through it, turns the pages, right? Points out things, even if they never say a word, they're reading it. That's how a toddler reads. Writing is holding a pencil and making marks, right? So what do we need to do to help kids do these things? We'll learn about it.